Kind of a solemn way to start this morning, and thank you to Paul for taking this time under his own wing here this morning. So, not to dishonor how we started this morning, but we are going to turn to chapter 28 of Genesis and turn our attention and our focus to the study of God's Word for a bit this morning, and we'll do so in remembrance of what just took place and throughout the course of the next several weeks. Remember and pray and hold and encourage and undergird. So we're still in the life of Jacob at this point, and in this life of Jacob, it's probably fair to recognize somewhere in this kind of window of time that we're given a certain amount of information and history of Abraham. We're getting given a little bit more of a narrow accounting of the life of Isaac, but when it comes to Jacob, we're given a pretty significant amount of historical accounting of what happened in Jacob's life, and there's a, for lack of a better term, and I don't know of a better way to talk. Communicate it. Daniel has had this kind of series on the in-between. This is a kind of an in-between event where the historical accounting of Jacob's life has been going along, and then the historical account of Jacob's life continues on. And to the best of my discernment, there's a birth benchmark, there's this benchmark, and then there's the fords of Jabbok. And those are the kind of the three major benchmarks that I use when I look at his life. And so we're in one of those benchmarks for lack of a better term. And in this benchmark, this is not intentional, but not to repeat a kind of a 3-point or a 3 characterization. There's a blessing, there's a revelation, and a vow here that happened in this piece of history, and that I want to turn our attention to this morning. There's a blessing of the father, Isaac. There's a revelation of God, from God to Jacob. And then there's a vow of Jacob. And Brad and I will use bookmarks or bookends at times, and so this is kind of like 2 bookends and a bookmark for me as I look at this. And so that's going to kind of frame how we attempt to approach this piece of history this morning. And so if you're looking for kind of a structure for the morning, that's kind of it: a blessing, a revelation, and a vow. And again, it's not intentional to kind of follow a model that we had last week, because that was totally different, but it is a way to frame what we're looking at here right now. If you followed the history at this point, Esau's pretty upset, and whether or not you think that he's got a right to be upset or he doesn't have a right to be upset, he's upset to the point that he's willing to kill his brother. From our perspective, we would look at that and say, well, it's a very low probability something like that's going to happen, because God's already got his hand on this young man. But Esau doesn't know that. Esau doesn't even believe that. Esau has heard that the blessing of the father has already been, the blessing of God through the father, the Abrahamic blessing, has already been passed on. But it's clear that he doesn't necessarily subscribe to that idea for another. Now, he sure wanted it for himself. But if it's going to be passed on to another, the subscription to the idea that his brother is the one that receives the blessing of the family line by God through Abraham, through Isaac, and now on to his brother Jacob, all of a sudden it really doesn't have the kind of gravity it once did. And to that end, his intent is to kill his brother. But he's going to wait until after his father died. And there seemed to be this kind of odd nobility in that for me, that there's somewhere in my conscience, I can't do this while Dad's still alive, but once Dad's dead, he's fair game. And there's a twisted sense of nobility there, and I only highlight that because that's not the only time that we'll see this wayward morality of Esau, and I only bring that up because of what God said about these boys. One, I loved, the other I hated. Or the faithfulness of one, which takes us a long way to get to, I loved, and the rebellion of the other I hated. And we're going to see a picture of, as a part of the narrative of what happened here, we're going to see a picture of just how rich and deep that rebellion and how intentional that rebellion is. So let's get started by just reading this passage, and then we're going to walk a little deeper into it. So Isaac called Jacob and blessed him. I'm sorry, chapter 28, thank you. 28:1, yeah. Yeah, he was on board. 28:1. So Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him, and he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Padamaran, to the house of your mother's father in Bethuel. Take a wife for yourself there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. And may God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of people. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, and so you may take possession of the land where you now live as an alien, the land that God gave to Abraham. Isaac sent Jacob on his way, and he went to Padamaran, to Laban of Bethuel the Aramean, brother of Rebekah, who was the mother of Jacob and Esau. And Esau learned that Isaac had blessed Jacob, and he sent him to Padamaran to take a wife from there, and that when he blessed him, he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman, and that Jacob obeyed his father and his mother and had gone on to Padamaran. And Esau realized how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac, so he went to Ishmael and married Mahaliath, a sister of Nebaioth, daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, in addition to the wives that he already had. Now Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. And when he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. And taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head, and he lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on earth with its top reaching to heaven. And the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And there above it stood the Lord. And he said to him, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, the God of Isaac. I will give you your descendants in the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the east and to the west, to the north and to the south. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. And I will be with you. And I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land, and I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. When Jacob awoke from the sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. And he was afraid, and he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, the gateway to heaven. Early the next morning, Jacob took a stone, and he placed it under his head, the stone that he had placed under his head, and he set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it, and he called that place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and watch over me in this journey I'm taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's house, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. It's all of chapter 28. 28, Brad, from start to finish, in case you're keeping track. Rebekah goes to Isaac and tells Isaac, I'm sick to death of these Canaanite women, and if my son takes a wife from here, there's just no reason for me to continue living. And oh, by the way, his brother wants to kill him, and so we need to do something about that. I made a characterization of Rebekah last week that revealed that Rebekah expressed a great deal of faithfulness in spite of the events and the things that are going on around her. But at this point, I would also include that faithfulness has kind of hit a brick wall with, I trusted God enough to do what he said he would do, and that my role in it. But now when my two sons when Esau now has basically sworn out a hit on his brother, I don't trust God to protect him, so I need to get rid of him. And so I'm going to get him out of here to keep him safe. So I'm going to tell my husband to send him to my family to get a wife. he's getting of marriage age, and he needs a wife anyhow. So Abraham calls him in. Abraham doesn't tell him that he's had this conversation with Rebekah. He doesn't say anything at all about his mother having overheard that his brother wants to kill him once his son dies. He just says, I want you to go. Gail's smiling at me. What did I do? Isaac. Thank you. I knew there was something I did. If Gail's got eye contact and she's smiling at me, I knew I've said something stupid or wrong or needs to be fixed. And so thank you, Gail. So Isaac sends him out. This is that kind of first piece, that blessing. Isaac sends him out, and he sends him out with this blessing. And the blessing is remarkably close to the blessing that God gives. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers and become a community of people. That very close to, and certainly in keeping with, and I'm going to suggest very deriven from what he heard from his dad. That the God who has given me this blessing has given me a blessing to prosper and grow into a group of people. And your brother Ishmael was not the son of that promise. You, Isaac, you are the son of that promise. You hold that blessing that is being passed on from me unto you. It is your job to steward that blessing as you move on. And now he recognizes that he's old. His eyes are failing him. It's time to pass on that blessing. That blessing has passed on, and now he's about to send his son out into the world. And so he reminds him, you carry that. God is going to bless you to a degree that you are not going to just simply waste away into the annals of the history of time. That you are going to be prosperous and you are going to grow into not just a family, but a whole community of peoples. May he give you and your descendants the blessing he gave Abraham so that you may take possession of the land where you now live as an alien, the land he gave to Abraham. Now, the blessing of Abraham includes two things, one of which is implied here, one of which is specifically stated here. The blessing of Abraham that is implied is that he will curse those who curse you. He will bless those who bless you. Meaning that his hand of protection against your enemies will be on you, son Jacob. His hand of blessing to prosper you and give you this land will be on you, son Jacob. So one of those two parts of that Abrahamic blessing was implied. One of them is stated specifically. And then Isaac sent Jacob on his way, and he went to Paddan Aram. So it's worth noting that the first kind of piece here that we would want to hang on to is that blessing. That it's time for my son to go take a wife, and I sent him with the full endorsement of the line of this family. That it is when you take a wife, this is what you're taking on. Now, it may be fair to just remember that what God is doing when God creates a marriage at this point. It may be, there's as many definitions of marriage out there as there are leaves on trees. We marry our critters in some areas, and we have civil unions, and we have cohabitations, and we have kind of spirit unions, and we have all kinds of definitions of marriage. We should be aware that there is only one definition of marriage. There is only one structure of marriage. There is only one construct of marriage. And that is what God gave in the beginning of Genesis when he said that a man should leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. And then remember what God says in Malachi. I do this for the purpose of creating godly offspring. Those two pieces are God's definition. There's lots of other things that God says about marriage in between there. But those two pieces are the anchorage definition of marriage. That it is one man, one woman, unioned by God, and the vows that we take are the vows to each other, but they are before God. To break the vows to each other is before that to break the vow to God. And the reason God creates that union is because I want you to grow and be prosperous and become a community of peoples. It's what he's saying here. a community of a fellowship of Christians, a fellowship of the faithful. This is really specifically why God tells us, do not marry outside your faith. Don't choose a worldview and a mindset and a belief system, and it's hard to use the word convictions when you talk about these types of worldviews, but even if you're willing to go so far as to say convictions that are contrary to my will for your life. Remember, you are mine. My way is to become your way. I'm asking you to choose a spouse who shares my way, such that my way is both your way when I union you in one flesh. So the idea that Rachel has to say, it's better for me just to die than to have, Rebecca, thank you. Rebecca to say, it's better for me to die than to have my son marry this, I forget, there's a characterization at one time or another where she characterizes the Hittite women, but it's not a very favorable characterization. I forget what it is. But these Hittite women, which you might say, what's the challenge with the Hittite women? I don't have a really good answer for it, but they ain't one of us. And she struggles seriously with that. Now, I want to save my son's life because I don't want to lose both my sons in the same day. If they go to battle with each other, this is not going to be good. But I don't want him to live either with this a spouse that is at spiritual war with what God has promised our family. She takes it very seriously. So when Esau learns this, this is that interim piece of, thank you, that interim piece of rebellion. That there was a willful, if what God said I hated in Esau has a better picture, I don't know what it is, and maybe it is there. But for lack of that, this is the picture right here. This is the picture. When now Esau learned that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him off to Paddan-aram to take a wife from there. And when he blessed him, he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman. And when Jacob had obeyed his father and his mother, and he had gone to Paddan-aram. Now Esau realized how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac. So he went right out, and he went to Ishmael, and he married a daughter of Ishmael. It's one thing to know God's will and to do nothing. It's another thing to know God's will and then totally 180 degrees out of phase, take the opposite direction. This is a willful rebellion against God's will. And it is an attack upon that fundamental union that God creates, marriage, for the purpose of godly offspring. And once again, he's taking the blessing of God's provision of marriage, usurped it for himself, redefined it for his own purposes, and launched off in rebellion against God. Can you see I look at this and I say, we could have gone through this whole history here and not included that, and we really wouldn't have missed a beat. The rebellion of Esau here. You could just take that out, and the narrative continues on without missing a beat. I look at this and I give very strong consideration to the possibility that God is making very, very, very clear right in front of us in black and white without any real effort to even think about it, an understanding of why this rebellion is so bad. Why I get to the point of saying the name of Esau should just resonate in your mind, equivalent with rebellion. Why that is so significant. But he does. He takes off, and of all people, Ishmael's daughter. Then Jacob left Beersheba, and he set out for Haran. And when he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. And taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head, and he lay down to sleep. He had a dream on which he saw the stairway resting on the earth, and with its top reaching into heaven, and angels of God were ascending and descending upon it. And there above it stood the Lord. Now I am stopping at a comma there, There above it stood the Lord. If you're reading the Holman Standard, you'll see there beside him, meaning Jacob, the Lord stood. I had seen that and heard that, and so it was either 11 or 12 translations that I looked this particular verse up in, and there was only 2 translations that said the Lord stood beside Jacob. All the remaining translations said that he stood above. So I did what I commonly do. I went to my Hebrew interlinear and looked up the language, and the language says above. A lot is made of where God stands here in some thoughts, some expressions of ideas about what happened here. I'm not necessarily going to lose a huge amount of sleep whether or not God stood by or at the top of the ladder. If you ask me, I'm going to say God stood at the top. And largely that comes from a fundamental understanding that California, no, and California, John MacArthur made. After 9/11, John MacArthur was on Larry King's show, and he was asked, in the midst of all of the destruction, where is God? Now that's being asked from a guy who is of a Jewish lineage and espouses to some measure or some expression of Jewish faith, and he's asking a Christian Bible teacher where God is in the midst of all of this, which means either he doesn't have any idea or he's just interested in John's answer. And John's response was that many are saying that God is in the midst of all this, and he's not. God is right where God always is. God is on his throne. In the midst of all of our turmoil, and I'm paraphrasing at this point, in the midst of all of the turmoil that becomes the challenges of our lives, God is where God always is. God is on his throne. God is in control. God is sovereign over the challenges that we face. God is on his throne. I'm going to suggest to you, if I have to, in addition to, that's what the Hebraic language actually says, God is standing at the top. If I have to lean one way or the other, I'm going to lean that God is where he's always at. Sovereign, above all. And yes, we're going to see something truly amazing here about the nature of the God that is sovereign and above all. But if I have to answer that question, where is God? God's at the top of the ladder. God's in his throne. God is where he's always is, sovereign. So Jacob stops at this place. Now he will call this place Bethel. Now, if I read the kind of the chapter verse book sequence of Scripture, this was already called Bethel, wasn't it? Well, it says here that it used to be called Luz, and now he calls it Bethel. Well, that was actually established back in Abraham's day when Abraham called this place Bethel. I'm going to suggest to you that in the same way, if we're speaking about a history of the Civil War, and there is an event that took place in Carmel, California. Carmel, California doesn't exist yet. But if we are having a conversation about the Civil War, and there's an event that happened in this piece of geography all the way out in California that we now know as Carmel, we would say today, out in Carmel, X happened. Even though Carmel didn't exist yet as a community. That's what I'm going to suggest is happening here. That at the time Moses receives this post-Exodus and recounts all of this through scribe to record all of this. At that point, we all know what Bethel is. Bethel's been long established. It was established by Jacob here. But to refer to this piece of geography when we're talking about Abraham and the place that he had his event, which was just a piece of dirt on the ground somewhere, which was not. I'll get to that in a second. We refer to it as Bethel. For us to know principally where it happened, because we know where Bethel is. It was the city that used to be called Luz, that's now, or the village, it used to be called Luz, it is now called Bethel. So I want to the best of my discernment, this is where, this is when, and this is why. And it's kind of important. Where is Bethel? Bethel's about 20-ish miles north, ever so slightly northwest from Jerusalem. And what do we know about that region? That is the region of Moriah. What is the region of Moriah? God's land. What is happening here is that Bethel, God's house, Bethel, house of God, Bethlehem, house of bread, Bethel, house of El, God, El Shaddai, El, God. Bethel, house of God, is right there in the middle of God's land. God, the foundation of the definition of this land is really important, and it's going to become more important as this event unfolds here that he is having at what he calls now Bethel, or the house of God. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and Isaac. It's really I think it's worth noting here that it won't be too long before God, when he calls upon someone, says, oh, I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. I am your God, I am your Savior. But that's not spoken of yet because that hasn't happened yet. The idea that I am your Savior really wouldn't mean a whole lot to him right now. I am the God of your line. What means a whole lot right now is the Abrahamic covenant. The God of Abraham, the God of your father Isaac, and now, because of what happens here, I will be known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so when God introduces himself to Jacob here, I am the God of Abraham and Isaac. And it's when I read that, I just put a ... because there's more to come here, and you're next in line. He didn't know this yet. This is like totally awesome that he finds that out, and the way he finds that out here. But you don't know this yet, but I'll soon be known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He said, I'm the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac, and I will give you and your descendants this land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out the east to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Though through you and your offspring I am with you, and I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land, and I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Now remember, Jacob's asleep, and he's having this dream. It's a dream of revelation. I always have to force myself. You may have to do this too. I don't know if you have to do this. I have to force myself to remember that there's dreams that I have, and then there are dreams that are revelations. This is God communicating with someone while they're asleep, while all of their earthly and human defenses are low, and he can actually speak to us one-to-one. And so that's what's happening here. Yes, it's happening while he's unconscious. Yes, it's happening while he's asleep. But make no mistake that there is a divine communication, a divine visitation by God here. This is why I refer to this as the second piece of this is revelation, because that's what God is doing in a way that it will anchor itself at soul's level. God is speaking to Jacob here, and this is really amazing. I don't think Jacob gets this yet, but this is very true. I'm not telling you just your story. I'm telling you y'all's story. I'm the God of Abraham and Isaac. I'll soon be known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You have 12 sons. 12 sons are going to do exactly what your father told you, grow into a community of peoples. I'm going to take it one step forward and tell you, you're going to scatter out all over the world. As far as the east is the west and the north is the south, you will cover the globe. Not you, but your people, your line. And you're going to do that such that all peoples on the earth will be blessed through you. He's not telling him just the next couple of few years in his life. By the way, he's going to be gone 20 years. When he leaves his house to the time he comes back, it's 20 years. He labors under Laban for 20 years before he comes back. It's not just you coming. It's just not you going out. It's that whole nation of people that I am making of you, which you really don't get just yet, but you will. That whole nation of people, they're just spread out all over the earth. When I made my promise to Abraham that the world would be blessed through him, you're next. You're next in the line of creating this people through whom which the entire world will be blessed. He's not just talking about the kind of the myopic position of just his life, of Jacob's lifespan. He's talking about the breadth of all future that has yet to be unfolded, and how through the Jewish nation all the world will be blessed. And what we recognize is through the Jewish nation is produced the Messiah. And by the Messiah, indeed, all of the world is blessed. But some will take the way of Esau. Some will take the way of Jacob. But all the world will be, the Lord God of all creation will be made known to all of the world through this family. And the really amazing, the additional amazing thing about this, and he says, I am with you and will watch over you and wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. Now it's really, from Jacob's perspective, it's great to know that I'm going to go home. I'm not going to just head out and never come back home. We have a son who lives in Florida and is making his life there, and he's met his wife, and things are wonderful and it's great. But it's not necessarily likely that he's ever going to be moving back to Kentucky and making Kentucky his home again. That's where he's made his home. Isaac doesn't know for sure, but he assumes that Jacob's going to come back home. Jacob's going out. He doesn't know how long he's going to be gone or if he's ever coming back home. He sounds good. But what God tells him here is that I'm going to bring you back home, which from Isaac's perspective, that's a good thing. I like the idea of coming back home. But that's not all that God's talking about. Remember, God's talking about the breadth of all future history that has yet to unfold. That I will ingather my people back to my land at the end of days. That's one of the hallmarks of the end of the time of the Gentiles, is when Israel again becomes the center of the life of the Jewish nation. To kind of put it in perspective, there are more Jewish people living in the city of New York than there is in the entire nation of Israel. Israel just holds a tiny population relative to the world of Jewish people. Indeed, the Jewish people have spread out from north to south to east to west to cover the entirety of the globe. Indeed, the Messiah has come to the Jewish people in order to bless the entire world. But a day is coming, Jacob. It's not just you are going to come back home to, what time are they in? Beersheba. It's not that you're going to come back to Beersheba. It's just all of Israel is going to come back to this nation. This nation that is most characterized as the region of Moriah, God's land. And now it'll go one step further. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place. Just to kind of keep us in order, the blessing has now been conferred by his father. The revelation has now been conferred by God. And so the last piece of this is the vow. And the vow he doesn't just wake up and say, hey, lightning in a bottle. Here's my vow. No. When Jacob woke up from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord was in this place. And if you haven't underlined it or marked it or highlighted or made some note about it, make note of this. And I was unaware of it. Surely God was in this place, and I was totally unaware of it. Daniel spoke this morning of a kind of a sideline in his sermon of Jesus entering into a synagogue and casting out a demon-possessed man in there. What he didn't include in that verse is that he was in there. And so were the synagogue leaders. And so were the worshipers and the congregation. Everything was there. And they didn't even know it. You had a demon-possessed man in your midst, sowing dissent within you, and you didn't even know it. It wasn't until Jesus walked in and identifies this that he cast him out. And the very first, I guarantee the very first thing that crossed most, if not all of their minds was, there was a demon-possessed dude in the house, and we didn't know. Now this says practically nothing about the demon-possessed guy, and everything about everybody else. How is it that we didn't know? Any thinking person in that congregation, in that group of people, in that priestly leadership should have said, how is it that this happened and I didn't know? How is it that we can be so undiscerning, so unaware, and not know that the enemy of the soul was sitting right in our midst, and we had no perception at all about it? I'm going to take you back to Jacob here. He wakes up and he says, oh my gosh, surely God was in this place and I was unaware of it. Now I'm going to suggest to you that what he's saying was, he wasn't talking about the dream. The dream was a part of it, but that's not what he's talking about. This land, because that's what we're talking about, right? The land. This land that God promised Abraham through Isaac, and now me. Surely God is in this place. This is not just a piece of geography. This is land that God has sanctified or set apart unto himself for the purpose of giving it to our people as our land, a place to live. And he's here. He blesses this place. I don't want to make too much about just dirt, because too much is made about dirt in all nations. But I do want to recognize that for the first time, I'm going to suggest to you, if you don't go here with me, you don't have to, but I think I'm on pretty good ground on this. For the first time in Jacob's life, he realizes God is not just the God of my fathers, but God is with me. God is here. God is present. Whether you say God stood at the top of the letter or beside Jacob, it's really kind of poetic to think that he stood beside Jacob, even though that's not what the Hebrew language says. But even that is like ethereally misunderstood, and it truly does say that God stood beside Jacob. The nearness, the intimacy of God in Jacob's life is now something totally different than what it was before this event. That it is that he somewhere this morning we sang Emmanuel, which means, of course, God with us. He, for the first time, recognized God is with me. It's not the idea that God is everywhere and God's blessed our family and wherever I go, God goes with me. God is my co-pilot. That's a bad thing to say, but God is my co-pilot. No, God is with me. God is present in this. And the thing that just totally blows me away is I was unaware of it. I was unaware that that's the nature of the God of my grandfather Abraham, the God of my father Jacob, the God who has now blessed me in this family line, is that he dwells with me. And that idea of God dwelling with us will show up here in a moment. I want to add one thing that I'll just confess ahead of time. This is poetic on my part. But when God speaks to him in this dream, he says, this is in verse 13, I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. He could have just said this land, the land that you're standing on, the land that you find yourself in, region of Moriah, this town. He could have said it 1,000 ways, but he says the land on which you are lying. I'm going to suggest to you that when God describes this land that he blesses, sanctifies, and sets apart unto himself for the purpose of giving to his people, to raise up his people in, this is the land of your rest. My place with you is a place of rest. You may take your rest in me. it is, I'll get this in principle. Can't cite you chapter verse. It's a psalm. It says, do not rebel in the days of old as you did at the rock of Mira, where it was said, they shall never into my rest. That's a psalm. And what that refers to is what Daniel spoke of recently in the events at the rock of Meribah, where the people rebelled against God, said, it would be better for us just to be sitting around eating leeks and garlic and all pomegranates and all that wonderful stuff that we had back in Egypt when we were slaves, than you to bring us out here where we just die of starvation and thirst, and it's just a horrible thing. And Moses gets upset, smacks the rock. The rock does give forth water, but Moses does not get to go into the promised land. This is considered an act of rebellion by God, the people rebelling against God. He still provided for them in spite of their rebellion. But the psalmist gives us a better definition of what's going on here. He says, don't be rebellious like that. Because when you're rebellious like that, you will not enter into my rest. My question, that when I read that psalm, my first question was, what does it mean to enter into the rest of God? What is the rest of God? What is the peace, dwelling within the peace of God? What does that look like? How is that defined? What does that mean? Well, I don't have a perfect answer for what that means, but I know what it's not. What it's not is a life of rebellion. And God tells Jacob here that where you are lying, this land, where there can be peace between us, the estate of our dwelling together. Oh my gosh, I was totally unaware of this. Is that what it means to worship this God? That he actually dwells with us? That it's not just a belief that we have, or a legend that we hold on to, or a tradition that's passed down through our families. But it's real. It's true. It's almost like the guys coming down from the Mount of Transfiguration. Oh, he is God, and there is eternal life. There's an epiphany there. This is an epiphany. Surely God was here, and I was unaware of it. And he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? None other than the house of God. This is the gateway to heaven. He makes a pretty significant a proclamation about the event. No, this place and what happened at this place. Now, are we familiar with the Jewish mysticism? There's a denomination or a division of Judaism of Jewish that falls into the category of Jewish mysticism, known as Kabbalah. Anybody familiar with Kabbalah? Yeah. I'm sorry?
Just from Madonna.
Okay. Yeah. And it is a rich, very deep thinking exegesis of Jewish history. I'm not saying Kabbalah gets it all right. I'm not saying Kabbalah gets a lot of it right. But some of the things that Kabbalah will approach goes way beyond just a surface level reading of Torah. That they're asking hard questions and they're looking for real answers. And one of the things that Kabbalah will focus on is this event, this piece of history, and what Jacob proclaimed when this happened. And within Kabbalah, I'm not saying this is right or true, I'm just saying within Kabbalah, when you start asking hard questions and you say, what does this really mean? What is really being said here? The Kabbalist, if that's what they refer to as a follower of Kabbalah, believe that this piece of geography is truly that. And in the Kabbalist life, at one time or another, you should make a pilgrimage to this piece of geography, because they believe that of all the things that can hinder the prayers of men, if you will just go to Bethel, the house of God, in the region of Moriah, the land of God, and offer your prayers there, just at least once in your life, you will be heard. That it is truly the gateway of heaven and the house of God. That's what they believe of this place. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not necessarily saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that this is what Jacob is overwhelmed with. I'm totally overwhelmed with the idea that God actually dwells with us. And so he said, early the next morning, Jacob took a stone and he placed it on the stone he had placed under his head, and he set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. Pouring oil on a rock is, maybe in some cases is just a kind of a waste of good oil. You can work that oil into that rock all you want to, but you're not going to get anything great out of it. It's not going to be more tasty. You're not going to eat that rock. You're not going to make that rock feel any better about itself. It's just pouring oil on a rock. That's not what he's doing, of course. Of course, what he's doing is anointing that rock. He sets up that rock as a pillar. He pours oil on it, and he called the place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. Bethel, Beth, house, El, God. House of God. This is the dwelling place of God. Now, whether or not he was talking about this piece of geography, that particular spot, whatever, what he's saying, he's saying no less than what has happened here is an expression of man dwelling with God. This is a fair time to say it. Abraham got a chance to have conversations with God. Jacob gets a chance to have these conversations with God. Isaac never got this. In the middle, there's no record of God having a conversation with Isaac. But not only does Jacob get this conversation, but he gets this revelation that now inspires him. God indeed dwells with man. God indeed watches over his created people. He will bring his people home. He will not forsake us until he has completed his good purposes. These are all the things that God tells him in the Revelation. And he has communicated that to me in a way that I recognize this place, this event, even this little rock that I slept on last night. This is a benchmark in my life. A lot of waywardness is going to happen before we get to the fords of Jabbok. Extraordinary thing happens at the fords of Jabbok. I can't separate the events at the fords of Jabbok from this. But I am going to suggest, in terms of idea, but a lot will happen in between. I'm going to say this carries him to the fords of Jabbok. This knowledge carries him to Jabbok. Jabbok carries him to the end of life when he's found in Egypt worshiping while leaning on his staff. If I have to look at benchmarks in history, that's the very last one in his life, is when he's found in Egypt worshiping on his staff. So we are going to have to close here fairly quick. So now the last part. Then Jacob made a vow. If God will be with me and will watch over me in this journey I'm taking and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear so that I return safely to my father's house, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. Just really, really quickly. It's really easy to read this and think that it's a conditional thing. I've got my litmus test. If I have food to eat until I get home, if I have clothes to wear until I get home, if I actually even get home, if I get home, at the end of that, if all those conditions are met, then have at it, I'm yours. That's not what it is. It's an if-then logic. I think all of us know that if A plus B equals C and C equals 7, then A plus B equals 7. It's just a logic. It's a piece of rationale that says of all the things that I know, this is true. This much is true. For those who will even say with good intentions within our Christian faith that you just got to believe. It's a leap of faith. You just got to trust. No, God gives us every reason to believe. God has equipped us with logical ability to reason. He even tells us that in the first chapter of Isaiah. Come now, let us reason together. Think this through. Walk it through. Everything that I've just shown you, I dwell with you. You can trust me. I've already proven this to you. You didn't come seeking me. You didn't go to sleep saying, hey, I hope I see God tonight. You went to sleep because you were tired because the sun had set. I came to you. I proved to you that I am who I say I am. I give you every reason to believe in me. All he's done is when he says if, it's an if-then logic. It's because A plus B equals C and C equals 7 that A plus B equals 7. It's not if, it's because. I'm not rewriting scripture. I'm just clarifying that he's not bargaining with God. But remember, this is a vow. It's not a kind of a if you meet my conditions. Give me food to eat, clothes to wear, that I return safely to my father's house. Then the Lord will be my God, and this stone I have set up will be. This stone he set up. This is the anchorage. Thank you. This is the anchorage. This is the stone that will testify against me if I ever forsake. That's what he's going to set up a heap of stones with Laban, and they're going to make a covenant between each other. The reason these stones are set up is because they stand as testimony against us if we fail, if we do not honor. What he's done is he's set up that stone, he's sanctified it, he's set it apart from all the other rocks on the hillside. This one is special. I've anointed it with oil. I refer to this as the dwelling place between God and man. And before this dwelling place, I make this vow. He is my God. You are my God. I'm going to say that has to carry him through a lot of really nasty, ugly life that we're going to get into before long, before we get to the fords of Jabbok, when he makes good on that proclamation, you are my God. I'm not going to suggest that he at any time ever forsook God, but I'm going to suggest that he spent a lot of his time not trusting God before he came back home. We got to close. Thoughts before we close this morning? This is a kind of a cliffhanger in his life, because there's so much that will happen after this. But this is as far as we can go this morning. Thoughts before we close this morning? Yes, ma'am.
Well, talking about the stairway to heaven, I've got a note in my Bible, John 1:51. Jesus said, I tell you the truth, you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. So it's like Jesus is the stairway to heaven. He is our pathway to get to God. At this point, he's the stairway.
I don't think I've ever linked those two together. Are you suggesting that this is a foreshadowing of what Jesus said, or Jesus is referring back to this to say the dwelling place of God is with man?
Yeah, well, Jesus was referring back to this passage. He said, you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man, which was, the stairway was, he had a dream, saw the stairway, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it.
Yeah, the parallel language, in my mind, links it too. I don't think I've ever put those two things together, and I really appreciate you bringing that forth. I'll have to chew on that this week. So I appreciate you bringing that forward. Other thoughts before we close this morning? Thank you, Marcia. I'm going to chew on that. Other thoughts? Oh, we got to close. Larry, would you close us in prayer this morning?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word and for your teaching, that we might understand our salvation clearly and thoroughly, that we might be all you'd have us to be in Christ. We thank you for our teacher and all that you have done for us, that we might live a life that would be pleasing to you. We ask it in Christ's name and for his sake. Amen.
Amen.
Todd, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Verse 9, when Esau went to Ishmael,
Esau went to Ishmael.
okay, and married a daughter, my Bible says he had additional wives.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of wives before he ever went to Ishmael.
Yeah, if you remember Rebecca's concern that all these, I can't remember exactly where it's at, but she has a disparaging characterization of Esau's choice of relationships, and she also recognizes that he's got many wives. So yeah, he's already taken Canaanite women as wives, but seriously,
So he took
heading off to Ishmael.
He headed off with all these Canaanite wives to Ishmael and took another one.
And took another wife, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's, yeah, he had, well, I don't know if he took these wives with him when he went to Ishmael, but that's part of the expression of the rebellion. You could say, hey, Dad, I'm thinking about taking another wife. Son, I got 8 school wives here. They're all Canaanites, but they're all your wives. I think I just need one. And I was thinking about going to see, Uncle Ishmael. What do you think? Yeah, they didn't have that conversation.
Oh, okay.
But to your point, though, the point that you're making is true. He already had plenty of wives.
Yeah.
The point of going